Georgia, it's such a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here to have. First of all, you're a terrific writer. Where does that inspiration come from?
That's very kind. Thank you. My father was a writer. I grew up in a house where I remember hearing the sound of his typewriter. So I think writing a book was something I thought from a young age was something anybody could do. Now I know how impossibly hard it is to write a book. But I think my father instilled that in me early. And I went into this particular project for We Were the Lucky Ones, not to be an author necessarily, but to be a family historian, to capture the story of what happened to my ancestors during the war and during the Holocaust, to preserve it as best as I could for them and also for my kids and their kids and so on, so they could pick it up someday and feel like they were there and make the story of the Holocaust feel relevant to them and of their ancestors and kind of understand, yeah, where they come from and why we're here today.
My ancestors also from Europe, and just before and after the war, they came, and the stories are absolutely both amazing and heartbreaking at the
Yeah.
same time. How families were separated and put into different camps and things like that. Um, in going back and discovering this past of your families, um, I bet you went through both sides of the spectrum.
Oh, emotionally, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was. I felt it all. It was very, very difficult at times. I think interviewing Felicia, who was 1 year old at the start of the war, was one of the most challenging parts of my research. Her stories were so heartbreaking, and she was so courageous in sharing them with me. And then when it came time to write those stories and imagine myself in her shoes, and then I became a mother halfway through writing the book, and all of a sudden I could put myself in Mila's shoes in a way that I hadn't been able to before. And her storyline became so difficult to write. But what I will say is that equal parts, the horrors that were shared, what the family had to endure to survive, they also talked about the lighter parts. They talked about romances, falling in love, or making music, or having children. There were babies born, and I tried to infuse the light with the dark in the book. And I think we did a really good job of also doing that with the show. And who knows? Maybe those lighter moments were what kept the family going in those dark days. We tried to preserve both sides.
I don't know if it's a large part of the population, but there's certainly a part of the population that doesn't think any of this happened. And what do you say to people like that?
I almost have nothing to say to people who think that way. I mean, this is my family's story. It's history. And at its core, it's a story of humanity. So I hope people take that away from it.
Yeah, there's an old saying: if we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it. And but what an inspiring and lovely series this is. I mean, each episode holds so much for the viewer to sit and then talk about after watching the episodes.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. It's one of our biggest challenges trying to fit it all in, right? And take 400 something pages of written content and translate it to the screen. And we tried so hard to stay as close as we could to the storyline. It really is, since it's based on a true story. We didn't want to veer from that. So I'm so happy to hear that feedback from you.
Thank you. It's a lovely series. I loved it. What should I read next?
Of mine.
Isn't that
Yeah, so I have a book coming out next year called One Good Thing,
yay?
also set in World War II Holocaust era Italy. So I'm in the finishing stages of editing that.
Perfect. I get the rap sign, so I gotta go. Thanks
Okay,
so much.
thanks.